Get me. Walls won't hold me tonight. If this town is just an apple, then let me take a bite. If they say why, tell them that it's human nature. Why does he do me that way? If they say why, tell them that it's human nature. Why does he do me that way? Reaching out to touch a stranger. Electric eyes are everywhere.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Please take your seats. For our next session, I'm pleased to have Ms. Liu back on the stage, who will introduce a multi-regional panel of our next session titled New Regional Trade Routes. Please note that the last session of B2B meetings will run from 2:30 until 4:30. After this plenary from 3:30, we will have a short coffee break. But when we come back at 4 p.m., do not miss out on the opportunity to witness finalists of the Young Entrepreneurs Competition from Hungary and Africa, who will present their business ideas to an experienced jury. The winner will be announced this evening at our gala dinner. Also, please note that there will be shuttle buses available for you from here to the venue of the gala dinner and back. These buses will depart from the main entrance of the Congress Center just upstairs. There will be 9 buses leaving from 6:45 to 7:15 p.m. Again, the last bus leaves at 7:15 p.m. Please make sure not to miss that. And now, without further ado, Ms. Liu, I hand it over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you again. I hope we had a lively lunch. We're back again, but this time with a totally different panel and a different topic. We're going to talk about new regional trade routes. As usual, this will be carried live on our Facebook page, so look for the handle of International Trade Center, and we hope to be able to maintain the interest of the discussion to our viewers online. Let's try that. So again, my name is Liu Xin. I'm host with the CGTN, the English language channel of CCTV. It's my great pleasure to be here for this discussion. And a quick introduction to our panelists this afternoon. They are Mrs. Nagy, Managing Director of the Hungarian National Trading House. Professor Caihua Zhu, Director of the Institute of International Trade of the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Mr. Deep Kapuria, Chairman, CII of Central Europe Committee and Chairman of the High Tech Group, India. Ms. Ying McGuire, Vice President of Technology Integration Group of the United States. Mr. Hani Salem Sombol, CEO of the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, Saudi Arabia. Ms. Kanayo Awani, Managing Director of the African Export and Import Bank of Egypt. And of course, Ms. Marian Jensen, Chief Economist with the International Trade Center. Now, regional trade is the most common form of trade for SMEs. Now, typically, they look to neighboring countries to as their first stepping stone to go international. And this year's SME Competitiveness Report focuses on the role of regions as exactly that, for SMEs to get integrated into the international value chains for goods and services. Now, deep regional agreements create bigger markets, open routes for investment, and attract international value chains. This generates opportunities for SMEs. Maximizing these opportunities contributes to inclusive and sustainable development. However, it's not obvious to SMEs how to use this platform very smartly. How can SMEs move up the international value chains, and how can they benefit from regional trade agreements, and how can regional trade and investment promotion be organized effectively? So I hope that this high-level private-public dialogue will help to look into the opportunities for SMEs in regional trade routes. First of all, let us welcome Marian to introduce the key findings of this year's SME Competitiveness Outlook, the flagship publication of the International Trade Center. Marian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jin. Thank you for this introduction. Thank you for being here today with us, and thank you, panelists, for being here to talk about a new regional trade routes. My name is Marian Janssen. As Jin has already said, I'm the Chief Economist of the International Trade Center, and I look forward to the discussion today because I hope it will give us the opportunity to discuss some of the findings of our SME Competitiveness Outlook that we launched at the beginning of the month in Geneva, and that focuses on the region. Wherever you come from, wherever you work, wherever you are active, your neighboring countries, your region, is likely to have been the first destination of exports for small and medium-sized enterprises in your region. So the dynamism of trade in your region, the activity of regional value chains will be key to determining whether your region can be a door to global trade. This year's SME Competitiveness Outlook provides tailored advice to policymakers, to business, and to trade and investment support institutions on how to make your region being a door to global trade. For trade and investment support institutions, you will notably find in the report information on how to build up regional networks of trade and investment support institutions. For business, there is a specific report, an SME guide to value chains in this document. And for policymakers, you will find two particular things of interest. You will find information on how to benchmark your SMEs against competitors in the same value chain in which you are active. And you will find advice on how to design regional integration agreements. Now, allow me to delve a bit more deeply into that last point. We argue in this report strongly in favor of deep regional integration, of deep integration in general. And we do this because we find that this is good not only for trade and growth, it is good for inclusiveness. Why is this the case? We find that adding a policy area to your trade agreements, for instance, adding investment in top of the trade agreement, you will create the possibility for more value chain activity in your country. Value chain activity goes up by 2.5%. That's good for business. That's good for big business, but not only for big business. In fact, we find that those who benefit most are small companies. We find that the gap in competitiveness between small enterprises and large enterprises goes down by 1.25%. That's good for inclusiveness. I mentioned investment, but we mentioned all the policies in the report. We actually make the point policymakers should think more like a supply chain manager. and think of his or her rationale. Supply chain managers look at trade, investment, taxation as one package. Policymakers tend to deal with these things in different ministries, separately. The more coherent your policies are, the better for value chain activity, the better for SMEs. Infrastructure is another example. We argue in the report that infrastructure should not just come as an afterthought to trade policy. These things should be thought about in parallel. If you want to target inclusiveness more explicitly, consider bringing references to gender equality to SMEs directly into your trade agreements. Many countries already do this. We've shown in the report that references to these two areas has tripled between the second half of the 90s and the last 5 years. Now, the report goes further than that in giving very detailed information on what is going on in regional trade currently and what you can do in whatever your position you have in order to help firms in your country to take advantage of this. We describe in the report what regional value chain trade looks like currently, and this is the picture you see up there. Value chain trade very much evolves around 3 hubs. One hub around the United States, one hub in Asia around China, Japan and South Korea, and one hub, a big one, around the European Union, with Germany playing a key role there as a headquarter economy. These are figures that are more and more known. It's also increasingly known, and we heard this morning, that regional value chain activity is underdeveloped in Africa and also actually in South America. This is interesting, but it doesn't help us to do something. It doesn't help us to understand what we can do in order to improve the position of our countries, of our companies in this picture. Now that's where ITC's SME competitiveness benchmarking comes in. It provides you with a tool to understand what is determining, what is driving where you are currently positioned within a value chain. And this allows us then also to assess what may happen next, where may changes occur. Now, we emphasize in the report 5 countries or regions where we expect different things to happen, maybe exciting things to happen in the coming years. In the Americas, we point at Colombia as a possible country for playing an increased role if regional value chain activity is going to develop there, because of its high level of competitiveness and its geographical position. In Africa, we point out that there are 2 poles of competitiveness, one in the north around Tunisia and Morocco, one in the south around South Africa. Unfortunately, these 2 poles are disconnected. Ongoing infrastructure projects may change this. If the region manages to connect these poles, new dynamics may evolve, may arise. Going to Asia, a lot of activity there, China having been a big player in value chain in the recent past, to a large extent as a supplier to value chains, but moving now increasingly to becoming a headquarter economy. We see more of this happening in the near future. Same thing in Central Europe, where a number of countries are very successful suppliers to regional value chains, but have the potential to become headquarters in the near future. Hungary is one of these countries. And we as ITC are very pleased and very proud to have worked with the Hungarian National Trading House on promoting SME competitiveness in Hungary, in the country that is hosting this year's WEDF. We have supported the National Trading House in collecting information on SME competitiveness in 3 key sectors of the country: agro and food processing, electronics, and ICT. And this has been done with the view of giving the National Trading House tools to better serve the needs of its SMEs to become successful exporters. Now, if you want to understand more, know more about what is happening in Hungary in order for SMEs to take better advantage of the ongoing challenges in the trade-off world, download this report. It is online as of now, but also go to the website, download our flagship publication, and listen to this panel if you want to understand where your companies, where your country is standing for the next generation, for the next moves of regional trade routes. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you. And Marion did the introduction for me as well for the next speaker, indeed. But still a little bit more on the next speaker, Ms. Erzsébet Nagy, Managing Director of the Hungarian National Trading House. Now, she's responsible for the coordination of trade fairs and exhibitions for the purpose of exploring new markets for Hungarian SMEs. Before that, she served as Consular Officer in Romania and Serbia with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. She also gained valuable experience with regional projects as the Managing Director of Somogy Flanders Business Incubation Center in Somogy County. Now, she's been involved in cross-border trade and economic development projects with the active participation of Hungarian and international trade organizations, chambers, clusters, and SME development agencies. Did I say the word correctly, Somogy? Thank you very much, Ms. Nagy. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon for everybody. It's a great honor to welcome you in Budapest, in our beautiful capital. I hope you have time to go also to the region. I come from the region, and it's very important to have the importance of this entity. On behalf of the Hungarian National Trading House, I would like to say a few words about investment and export promotions, how they should be integrated together. About a few words about this SME internationalization, and also how the National Trading House is promoting all these tools and instruments for business development. Hungary is an ideal place to invest. It's a geographical and geopolitical point which is emphasized lately. Hungary is also ideal for big investors, leading firms, and multinational corporations. 20 largest, out of 20 largest automotive industry suppliers of the world, 15 are present in Budapest, in Hungary, in the regions. Also, concerning the labor force, we have a very good ability. We have very good, excellent educational system, and concerning the vocational and high-level training courses can produce a lot of good businesses who become businessmen or businesswomen later on. The role of the multinationals are also important because they help to scale up and upgrade the businesses who can intervene or can be a part of the value chains. As I see, the continuous innovation, the high technologies, the strict audit rules, the high standard productions are really of great help how to get up, how to have an upturn in economy. These SMEs are helped and promoted by the National Trading House with different courses and training events. But a few words about how we were set up, and it's according to the government's aim, which saw that all these instruments, support and grant and aid institutions should be somehow unified, and an integrated institutional body was created by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. There are three pillars: the Hungarian Investment and Promotion Agency for investment incentives, the Hungarian National Trading House for export promotion, and the banking, which is a very important thing, the banking background, the financing tools, Exim Bank. These two entities work on a daily basis very close together in synergy, and if we have a project somehow either in Hungary or in other foreign countries, then we always focus on each identifying dimensions. What we see that we have to handle everything on regional aspect. Therefore, we set up a global range of offices, which is in 4 continents, in over 50 countries. Of course, it's very much supported by our parents, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, because the foreign representations are always welcoming our initiatives wherever we have an event, a business forum, or whenever we attract our small and medium-sized partners to enter the foreign market. The second level is the regional approach concerning our foreign partners around the border, the neighboring countries. Over there are 22 offices who attract business-to-business cooperation, joint ventures, stock funds, or would like to generate, energize the potentials of the region. These offices are very close cooperation with the domestic level, which is also again a network where we have the direct contact to our Hungarian businesses. These 13 offices and the 22 offices around the border have a very unified cooperation and are connected to the global approach. We have, as I said, training courses also for sectoral and relations, and this is what we can offer beside building up partnerships for our exporters. Thank you, and something for the next speaker, because we agreed that we will somehow channel from one to other, that also the new trade roads like the Silk Road, One Belt and Road is important for us, the V4 Group Association, and this is something we would like to open also for the Hungarian companies.
Indeed, a very interesting topic there, China's proposal of building this trade routes, new trade routes, that's called Belt and Road Initiative. A lot of discussion on that, and Hungary is actually in a very important juncture for that trade route. So we'll hear more from that in just a moment. Let me introduce our next speaker, Professor Zhu Caihua. She is a professor in economics and director of the Institute of International Trade of the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Now, she used to be Dean of the School of International Economics of the Chinese Foreign Affairs University. She was also she is now one of the chief researchers for NEAT, the Network of East Asian Think Tanks, China's working group, and an academic fellow of the Research Center of Peace and Development. Professor Zhu, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My topic is about the Belt and Road Initiative. Before I give my points, just allow me to make a correction on the mentioning of the BRI as China's strategy. Actually, it's not China's strategy, but China proposed the initiative for international cooperation. And here are 3 points, my 3 points. First, the aim of the BRI is to create an open, inclusive, and balanced regional economy, or even global economy that benefits all, based on by upholding Silk Road spirit of peace and cooperation, openness and inclusiveness, mutual learning and mutual benefit. Therefore, it's open to all countries and the international organizations for engagement. And it's also a systematic project which should be built based on principles of consultation, joint efforts, and shared interests. Second, the way to the beautiful vision is connectivity. Connectivity in policy, infrastructure, trade, finance, and people are the 5 pillars. Past globalization witnessed not only a well-connected world in terms of trade and finance, but also a poorly connected world in terms of infrastructure and people-to-people connectivity. And that's why we see a rather polarized world, or rather unbalanced world, both globally and domestically. The BRI highlighting cooperation not only in trade and financial connectivity, but also infrastructure and people-to-people connectivity, is trying to make up the loopholes which were ignored in the past to make the process of globalization more balanced and more inclusive. Third, each country can contribute to building of the BRI based on its needs and advantages. In terms of needs here, I identify at least two common needs. First is infrastructure, the importance of which we cannot stress more. The second is an open world market, whose importance stands out strikingly at the moment when some major economies are turning to protectionist policies. China, with a population of 1.4 billion people and its gross national income per capita reaching more than $8,000 last year, has now growing into a huge market for imports, and this will create millions of jobs for the rest of the world and also help thrive the SMEs in the world. Therefore, that's what China will contribute to the building of BRI, and also why during the Belt and Road Forum, which was held this May in Beijing, Chinese President Xi offered to host China International Import Expo starting from 2018. Next year, next November, exactly speaking, Shanghai will host the first expo and welcome you all to Shanghai. I think this is really a very good chance for especially SMEs to make full use of the Chinese huge market. Now, in terms of infrastructure, it seems that China has become the largest contributor in infrastructure. That's true. China is the initiator and the largest funder of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The bank has now approved at least 21 projects and also pushed the other existing international financial organizations such as WB and the ADB to invest more in infrastructure. And also China's participation in the world market has driven down the cost of building infrastructure lower to a level than ever. And that's why Chinese companies have contracted so many projects worldwide. And this may give some people an impression that the BRI is an infrastructure-first trade integration strategy with deepening of trade rules playing important but lesser role. My argument is not such. First,
Professor Chu, shall we leave the answer to the next round of discussion?
Okay. I'll just stop here. Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to talk about that. It's indeed an interesting subject. Let's move on to another guest, also from Asia, a very important player in trade, Mr. Deep Kapuria. He is chairman of the High Tech Group. That's a group that spans a wide spectrum of products and services that include auto components, robotics, AGV, engineering and software, servicing global customers. Now, as a non-government member, he has led the business delegations to WTO, Geneva, and other ministerial visits. He has also been the president of Automotive Component Manufacturers Association of India. Now he's a director at the Global Innovation and Technology Alliance, a joint initiative of the Department of Science and Technology, the Government of India, and CII. Mr. Kapuria. Mr. Kapuria, please.
Thank you. I think I wear a couple of hats, so I'm going to start off with a contextual very quick understanding of where we are. We are in an era of defining moment, I would say, in terms of both global trade and investment. I have been engaged in the ministerials of WTO and even in various negotiations which I represent the industry in both in RTAs, PTAs and FTAs. So let me tell you that what we see today is rather challenging. The overall paradigm of trade and investment is being as disruptive as the technologies. If you see this today with shelving of TPP, the modernization of NAFTA, the Brexit, and various other challenges, we are in for something very different. And what are the mega drivers? The mega driver is technology. And within that technology is the digitization, the big data, the analytics, and thus it's changing not only the businesses, but is also changing the way trade is done. That's providing opportunities for SMEs, individuals, and obviously reinventing whether it's the GVCs or the regional value chains. Within this given condition, where are we as a company? We as a company, like we said, we are in the powertrain, and the powertrain, we have manufacturing facilities in 6 locations in India. We are also present in North America. We have a design house in North America and 3 manufacturing locations as well. And we export all over to Brazil, to Japan, and they are all triad markets, very, very discerning markets. And discerning markets means they are totally not going to excuse you either for late deliveries or quality. You have huge risks. Within this, we have supply chains which are both regional and global. We get components from all over the world, including Taiwan, Japan, Korea. We also purchase components from US, Canada, and obviously India as well. Now within this is how the structural reform is happening in terms of how OEs, specifically let me talk about the global OEs, are addressing risks. We all know about the Fukushima issue which happened. That disrupted the whole supply chain globally. So now the global OEs, as far as autos are concerned, are looking at what's called the tri-sphere strategy. So tri-sphere strategy means more regional focus. They want to de-risk themselves over the issues, whether it's a disaster which is based out of a company or a natural disaster. So that's the way the things are moving. But on the other end, we also need to recognize that today there's the merger between both goods and manufactured goods, that is, and services. You're very clearly seeing a very hazy line, as we are both in design, we are also in services, we are also in manufacturing. You can't today manufacture if you are not designing, or you can be, commoditized very, very soon if it's not that. So here we are in this situation. And within this, we do help our supply chain partners who are SMEs. We handhold them in various methods in terms of getting them up to speed. Our company has been recognized very recently for the most innovative company in the country. We are LEED's Platinum as far as manufacturing facilities goes. We are rated TPM, quality 3rd by JIPM. So we have also to get our supply chains in order, because unless they are up to the mark, we are going to fail. So we are doing a lot of effort. So within this given condition, we need to restructure and look at the global value chains very differently in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapuria. And next, let me introduce Ms. Ing Maguire, who is Vice President of Technology Integration Group. Ms. Maguire has established and fostered high-impact global initiatives, demonstrated her leadership capacity in various positions. She became the Global Vice President of TIG and a Senior Advisor of Nano Global, an emerging company bringing antimicrobial technology at the nano scale that heals and shields the world. She was appointed by the United States as Secretary of Commerce to the United States Investment Advisory Council. She's also an entrepreneur and was chosen as one of top 100 overseas Chinese entrepreneurs by the Chinese government. Ms. Maguire, please.
Thank you, Shing. Good afternoon. Are you all awake? Let me try it again. Good afternoon. All right. Or I can get up and dance if you're not awake. It is a tremendous honor to share the stage with these highly accomplished leaders, and I'm pleased to see so many women leaders on the stage, and what a great instant improvement compared to this morning. Come, give us a hand. Thank you. Now you're really awake. I first spoke at this forum 2010 in Chongqing, China. And going back to my native country to speak at this forum was lifetime experience. And today, thank you, Ms. Gonzalez and ITC team for inviting me back. I hope to be back again in the future. I'm here to tell stories. And hopefully you will learn something new this afternoon from these stories. When I was talking to folks in the hallway, people look at my name, Ing Maguire, they're like, what are you? Are you Irish? Are you representing US? And I told them I'm a world citizen. I was born and raised in China. In 1990s, I packed my life into one suitcase with $1,000 and migrated to US to pursue my American dream. For the past 10 years, a decade, my American dream has extended beyond just helping myself and my family to helping SMEs to participate in the corporate value chain. In 2007, I was Dell's Global Supply Diversity Officer, and our goal was to maximize utilization of SMEs in our global supply chain. At that time, we spent about $650 million with the women-owned, minority-owned businesses, but we were not happy. Our goal was to spend $1 billion with the minority, women-owned, and historically underutilized businesses in the United States and across the globe. So besides expanding our program in the United States, we set off to developing countries, start to identify and mentor SMEs in developing countries, and train their team in those countries, set metrics and goals. And so by 18 months after we set the goal, we spent $1 billion, it's a B, with the minority and the women-owned SMEs. And by 2010, when I left Dell, we spent $3 billion with the minority, women-owned small, medium businesses. And Dell is not the only Fortune 500 companies that have SME development programs. In the United States, there is an organization called the $1 Billion Roundtable. Sounds very impressive, right? They have 22 Fortune 500 companies who have spent more than $1 billion a year with the minority, women, disabled, veterans, gay, lesbian, small, medium-owned businesses. And so there are opportunity there for you. A couple of learnings that I had from my supply diversity officer days I'd like to share with you. First of all, when government agencies and public sector take the lead and set goals not only for their own buying teams, but for their tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers like Dell and Boeing to include SME in their supply chain, SME take a giant leap forward. For example, US government has a goal of spending 23% of their annual procurement spend with SMEs, with the historically underutilized SMEs like minority-owned, like women-owned, disabled, veteran-owned businesses. And the goals gets cascaded down to tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers like Dell and Boeing. So for a company like a Boeing and a Fortune 500 companies, SME inclusion program was initially driven by its government customers and eventually became a business strategy and a part of DNA. So I'm pleased to see so many developing countries begin to enforce requiring global companies to develop local SMEs in their local country in order to do business in these countries. So some regulation is good regulation. My final point is the second learning I learned from it is SMEs' bargaining power is through innovation. This morning you heard the President of Hungary, His Excellency, quoted Albert Einstein's quote twice, which is, "We shall require a new way of thinking if mankind wants to survive." So if you are competing with large companies and you're selling commodities, the chance is you're not going to replace these large companies as incumbents. It requires innovation. It's hard to replace these large companies, but most Fortune 500 companies are continuously seeking out innovative technologies, not only technologies, but business models or creative thinkings and idea in order to compete. And most of them have these pitch events that you can participate and get noticed. One of my latest innovation project I'm working on is as an advisor to SME called Nano Global. We're innovating a revolutionary solution to address the growing threat of antimicrobial resistance by combining nanotechnology with biotech, with digital technology. And we plan to take the solution to as many countries as possible, and I look forward to working with many of you as our partners. And the goal is to shield the world from the impending crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Almost lost track of time. I'm me, yeah? When you hear somebody beautiful and energetic and talking, you know, time just goes faster. So, Mr. Sombo, you have a hard act to follow. Well, that was a hard act to follow from Mr. Sombo. But anyway, a quick word on your title, on your background. You have your career in development banking, which started 3 decades ago. And you served in many technical and leading positions across the Islamic Development Bank Group. Now, you also had
which looks after trade, to become the trade arm of IDB, which is the ITFC. Of course, this accumulation of really long history of trade finance, over now almost 65 billion US dollar, was actually for trying to really enhance this kind of integration and cooperations among the OIC member countries. And I refer OIC member countries are actually the members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And definitely IDB group with the entities, the members are of course striving to really work with our international partners like the World Bank, the ITC and others, really to enhance really the role. When we started in the beginning in the trade finance business, needs were different in member countries, especially you hear, you know, all the needs. They want, you know, trade financing to support short-term financing to support the export or import of commodities. But all of a sudden, I think now things has changed. I think now it is becoming more important to see that recipients of your really assistance or recipients of your loans and financing are able actually to use this. It looks like now the area of capacity building is becoming very, very important, and also to help actually member countries, whether in the private sector or in the public sector, to really work their development issues. Looking back when we looked at all the efforts since I joined IDB 30 years ago, I have been hearing about the need to support SMEs, the need to support SMEs, and definitely there are a lot of efforts has been exerted during these years to really see something happening. I mean, now the SMEs need a different type of assistance. Yes, we need to reduce the cost of doing trade, whether through the subsidies or through maybe having preferential treatments. But now I think the SMEs now are more concerned about the fast really moving of technology so that they can be integrated. They need to build their capacities in new areas, and of course innovation, digitization is one of them. We try to help SMEs through building programs. In the past, as I said, we extend trade finance lines. Now we blend actually the trade finance lines with a package of really capacity building. So when we go really to extend a trade finance lines, we want to make sure that the SMEs are actually benefiting through a number of capacity building programs. And then, of course, this will enable them to maybe submit bankable projects. Also, we do train and try to build the capacities of the financial institutions so that they can deal with SMEs, because definitely there is a lack of also some skills that needed to treat the SMEs. We cannot avoid today that any transformation will require SMEs to be involved. As we mentioned many times, they constitute 80% to 90% of the economic tissues of the world. However, today we see that they are really contributing to 60 to 70% of jobs created in many countries. So you cannot ignore that. I'll give you an example. We have had, heard about what is Saudi Arabia is trying to do now. To really, they have this 2030 vision, and they want to transform the country. Without the SMEs, they know that they cannot do that, because they constitute, as I said, 80%. ITFC has created a program. We felt that we need to build their capacities in the area of development financing, for example. Yeah. We felt that they have issues with access to financing. That's why we are calling our partners, the MDBs, really to create funds for MDBs. We are leading now an initiative which is called the SME Fund. I hope this will work out with the World Bank, with the African Development Bank, and with others partners. And now also we are trying to really extend advisory services to them. In a nutshell, maybe in the second round I'll speak more about this. In a nutshell, the needs of the SMEs today are quite different, and we have to deal with it in a different way. This is where I should stop now and maybe come back later on.
Yeah, we will come back. Thank you very much. Let's move to our next speaker, Ms. Kawayo Awani, Managing Director of African Export and Import Bank. She is tasked with raising the level of intra-regional trade in Africa. And before becoming Managing Director, she was Director of Afreximbank's Trade Finance and Branches Department, which manages the bank's business development efforts in trade finance across Africa. Before that, she also served with Citigroup, her last position being that of Vice President and Head of Industrial and Commercial Corporates at Citigroup, Nigeria. Ms. Awani, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Let me just start by introducing the African Export-Import Bank. I know that this is a diverse audience, and some people may not have heard about us. African Export-Import Bank, or Afreximbank as we call it for short, is a multilateral Pan-African development financial institution. We promote, import, promote and facilitate intra and extra-African trade. We try to do so responsibly, profitably, sustainably. But having said that, the real thing is that we're a trade finance bank, but we're also a trade support institution. Why do I say that? Our ownership structure, which is that we're owned by 46 African states, ensures that we have preferred creditor status. It enables us to finance. But also, we're an investment-grade company, which means that we're able to de-risk transactions. So I've been having conversations with Hungarians, in our midst, who are looking into investing in Africa. What that means is that you can come to an Afreximbank to provide you with investment guarantees, to even guarantee government commitments to promoters, to be able to invest in Africa. The other thing also, by virtue of our ownership stature, is that we can also provide advocacy services. So, for instance, factoring is a product that supports small and medium-scale enterprises. Many studies have linked the growth and development of trade in EU to factoring. What that means is that in EU, a lot of the trade is done on open account basis, but in Africa, it's done on the basis of letters of credit. That in itself provides uncompetitiveness from the get-go. So we're promoting factoring, open account trade. So what that has meant is that we're advocating with governments. We've introduced a model law to be able to enable factoring to thrive. We also do, by virtue of that, the reason I say we're a trade support institution is that we're also able to provide twinning services. So we're able to matchmake. We're able to twin between lead firms, and what we call feeder groups. In my work in intra-African trade, we have a group of companies that we call intra-African trade champions. People know about a company called Dangote. But around Dangote can be a lead firm, but it has a lot of suppliers, So we even support using around the value chain activity to support SMEs. If I take it down to what I do in intra-African trade, our intra-African trade strategy is hinged on three and a half pillars. One is to create. Create means creating capacity for expansion of production facilities. We must add value for our SMEs to thrive. The reason that our SMEs are connected to the rest of the world is because of our supply side constraints. We don't have the industries, so we must create the capacity to add value to be able to connect the SMEs to begin to have an active value chain structure. Africa is notably known to export unprocessed raw materials, commodities. There is no shortage of market for Africa's natural resources. No shortage. But we must integrate and promote intra-African trade to get a chance at industrialization, if you know what I mean. The other pillar is connect. Thereby, what we do is that we recognize the number of SMEs and SMEs as engines of growth, but we understand that they have deficits in terms of understanding markets and international trade. So one of our interventions is to ensure that we support companies, they can connect the buyers with the producers, like export trading companies as we used to have them back in the day. The third pillar we also, that our strategy hinged on is on what we call deliver. And that has to do with efficient delivery systems, logistics, warehouses, infrastructure around transportation and what have you. The half pillar is measurement. We have tasked ourselves in Afrexim Bank to measure our intervention. We want to move away from talking to doing. And I will just end my short brief with a story of there was a question in the morning about cocoa. How can Ghana move up the cocoa value chain? A few years ago, we introduced what we call the Africa Cocoa Initiative. What did we do? We recognized that Africa accounted for over 70% of the production of cocoa in its raw form, produced cocoa. But the value we earn in that entire chain, in that entire industry was less than 6%. Ivory Coast is the world's leading producer of cocoa, right? But the value addition is done everywhere else but in Africa. So we decided that it was about time, and cocoa is not a raw material for anything. It was about time we started adding value and at least produce a raw material. And somebody this morning talked about liquor, powder, and butter. So we decided to support, basically in Ivory Coast and Ghana where we have intervention. We supported this SME company, which under extreme conditions could not add value. But we support them to add value. And today, what we have is that today they earn at least 100% of what they would have earned in beans, on cocoa butter, 50% on cocoa products, cocoa powder, and over 30% on the liquor. And that company has in itself expanded into Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Awani. Very interesting perspectives and very different for each one of you, looking from your backgrounds, some from the private sector, some from the public sector, and talking about different areas of attention you want to pay in the future. Now we're going to have a group discussion, I think mostly from two perspectives. First of all, how you look at the future future change, let's say, of regional trade. First, and secondly, what needs to be done to help SMEs from wherever you are to better integrate it, to take advantages of the situation concerning regional trade in the future. I would like to start with you, Ms. Maggie. What is the Hungarian take or your personal take on that? The first question, please. How do you see regional trade evolving in the future, and what does your agency want to focus your attention on?
Regions are very important. There we can find the local values and channel it to other regions. As I mentioned before, we have a regional focus, also domestic level. It's very important because this way we can find the potential businesses we can work with. We improve knowledge, business knowledge. We improve also the business environment they work in. And it's done not just with the Hungarian National Trading House, but also with our partners, with the chambers, with the clusters who are present in the region, and also with the local enterprise agencies who are very much involved in scale up the companies. This is what's happening in the region. And what else we can do? It's a little bit interregional. It's beyond the border, as I mentioned, that we have 7 countries around the border. We have these offices for 8 countries with Poland. And what we do there is a direct-to-direct business building. It's already international, but this way we build a cultural approach. We also invest in infrastructure. And that's, again, the policymakers, what they have to overtake. This way that we have a business environment which is better, improved for them, and try to launch some EU-supported program, like Interreg, cross-border, and this is what we can support in this region.
But how do you see the trend evolving in the near future? How do you see regional trade evolving?
I think this must be strengthened. because we have to rely on each other, we have to have trust to each other, and if we work out and build out such channels, then we can, proceed on more successfully.
Okay, thank you. Professor Zhu, let's take your perspective on these questions, but also first, please finish addressing the question that you didn't have time to talk about, which is the kind of perception that China's Belt and Road Initiative is an absolute infrastructure first, vis-a-vis the opinion that rules governing multilateral trade needs to be deepened. What is your answer to that question first?
Yes, my argument is not such, actually, for two reasons. First, the result that it seems like just like an infrastructure first strategy. Actually, it's not a strategy. The result is a market choice, because infrastructure is desperately needed in the region and the world as well. China happens to be the most competitive one to offer low cost and high standard, high quality infrastructure. Second, China gave same importance to the 5 pillars as mentioned. Regarding trade agreement alone here, China actually firmly believes that the multilateral trading system, the WTO, is still most important for the world trade to develop. But at the same time, China also believes deep trade integration will harmonize rules of investment and trade that will deliver inclusive growth and narrow the competitiveness gap between large and small firms. Market actually never run in a vacuum, but in the midst of different rules. The key is that what rules we should have, your rules, my rules, or our rules. I think this is the key. That's why we need to negotiate how to trade under the common rules. That's my explanation to the...
Yeah. I would just like to ask the rest of the panel, any comments on what she said, agree or disagree? Mr. Caporia?
Being in this for the last, since the Cancun ministerial, I've attended most of that. And also, I've been recently part of the RCEP, which is ASEAN plus 6, which includes China, India, Australia, Japan, and New Zealand. Now, the aspect, what is seemingly becoming very important is standards. Now, standards, and my colleague who's from China who's just made a point, China has very different standards. It's very difficult. It is actually a non-tariff barrier. Not non-tariff barrier to trade. So if you have hardware issues, you don't have any of the Facebooks or the Amazons or the... It's an enterprise, and please take it in a right spirit, in the way that we see it from a very different view, that if you want to export hardware, it's impossible. We have tried exporting a lot of stuff. We've not really been able to achieve much success, including an acquisition of a SOE. So there's a larger issue in terms of global integration of trade. And regional sets, if you have a trade imbalance which is going to be totally unsustainable, whether it's with a developing nation or a developed nation. So somewhere that issue needs an addressal. I mean, why are we seeing what we are seeing today? Why are we seeing this in trade? Primarily because the aspect of short-term political goals are not being met, whether they are of job creation, whether they are for issues of trade imbalances. I mean, why is this modernization of NAFTA happening, for that matter? Now, these are some very critical but crucial issues, besides, of course, the food subsidies, etc., which are going to be in the 11th ministerial, which is just coming on. I hope it resolves. Development agenda is out of the door. The developed nations have made sure that DDA is, primarily gone. So there are challenges of the multilateral issues. Thus, it is necessary, like what has been said, that we need regional cooperations. That's necessary. But the regional cooperations have to be equitable. And equitability is the key of seeing that the countries don't subsidize in a way that are hidden subsidies in some way.
Yeah, I got your point.
So primarily...
No, don't worry. No need to feel sorry about disagreeing here, because I
just want to generate, the other side of the coin.
No worry. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's necessary. That's why I asked your opinion. And basically, every day, whenever we talk about China-India relations, this kind of discussion will come up. I'm quite used to that, and I was expecting that. But again, Professor Zhu, do you want to address that, or shall we leave that for people to consider, to think about? But really briefly, please. Yeah, and other people, if you have anything to add, please. Yeah.
I just want
briefly,
to,
please.
How the regional trade will be shaped in the future. Actually, in my eyes, it will be shaped mainly by two forces. One is the trend or the direction of globalization. How will this trend go? Fortunately, the China proposed BRI is quite an open initiative for cooperation, and therefore this is not a concern for this region's direction. And the other force is, just as Mr. D mentioned, is technological force. And the technological force in this regard will just help facilitate regional trade. Actually, in the future, maybe trade from west to east or between west to east will be more replaced by regional trade due to this technological progress.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Sombo, please pick up on what we were talking about.
Yes, I just want to talk more about the difficulty of integration without looking at what is happening now with the SMEs especially, and the need to support them in a different way. We cannot really move into integration. Integration, if you look now at so many, the first thing the SMEs will look at is they're actually to be able to export, let's say, to neighboring countries. Yet they are thinking about being part of the value chain. I think these are very important. Where we in ITFC, we tried really many programs, and we felt that the best way is to go, first of all, to select the right partners. And here we have the ITC, we have the EIF, we have those who really have the same common objectives to support the SMEs. Then, of course, you have to really submit packages to this. I'll give you an example. We have, for example, many years we supported the coffee producers in Indonesia with only financing. And then we discovered that they are in their need to have, for example, a training center, a new way to access technology so that they can access information, so they can improve their yields, so they can at least be part of the, to be able to export and so on. So honestly speaking, I think the global, this global integration programs, I would say are very important. The other thing is that we need to see that as the trade finance gaps affect also the SMEs. This has to be addressed also by multilateral development institutions. We are trying hard now through really get together and see what we can do for these gaps. And of course, SMEs is going to be a part of that. And the examples are many, so maybe if there is any question later on, we can answer on this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kapuria, briefly, yes.
Very briefly, I think we are underplaying the issue of, I just want to highlight and underscore the issue of standards. Because SMEs, they are primarily, one is the disruption of technology. Second is they do not understand that even to export to the other country, they need, if they're not part of a value chain, they are going to have to adhere to certain standards. And that includes packaging. Even SMEs between Canada and US have issues. Even, writing French, putting the numbers in place in dozens or in numbers. So there are huge issues. I don't think that this forum is actually looking at the real issue. The SMEs have problems.
We talked about standards last year in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I think this should be stressed, and this is something we should continue doing rather than leave it at that kind of thing.
Okay.
Because it's the business model which is changing.
Yeah, I see your concern. Marian, you want to make a point? You want to make a note of that and maybe talk more about that later?
I'm not sure whether that mic functions.
Yeah,
yes.
we're hearing
I'm
you.
happy to refer to what you just referred to.
Just a minute,
Our flagship report last year focused on standards, we call it setting the standards for trade. And we also emphasize there the importance of regulatory institutions, certification institutions, and the potential for collaboration across countries in these areas. And I have in the past weeks been, also now my outreach, been emphasizing that point again, and making the call for talking more about regulation and making regulation a thrilling, I call it a sexy theme. So I wrote down, Ying said, some regulation is good regulation. I will get back to you on that. Indeed, it is an important issue. It's an issue we also mention in this report, where we notably describe how regulatory institutions, like standard setters, collaborate in some regions across borders, and what the importance is of this collaboration to facilitate regional trade.
Yeah, okay. Ying, you have been quiet. Please. Time is running out.
So I want to address a couple of things. One is One Belt, One Road initiative. Two is the standards, real quickly. So as a child growing up in China, in the school, we were taught about Silk Road originated from 200 BC, before any of us were born. And it connected East and West and really built the civilization of participating countries along the Silk Road, not just China. So this One Belt, One Road, it's kind of inherited that spirit, but took a new meaning. You're probably going to see more cranes and constructions going on, so lots of infrastructure opportunities. And I went to a briefing from Consul Generals of People's Republic of China in Houston, talking about One Belt, One Road initiative, and they were not just talking about China, they were talking about regional prosperity and international corporations. And I understand your point about kind of equal footing. So I think the spirit is really good beginning. I think the countries, there's 65 countries along that One Belt, One Road, need to come together and create some of the standard, create a bilateral agreement to ensure there's equality in trading. And one thing is 65 countries must come together and to build a SME inclusion policies and training and a mentorship to allow small, medium business to participate in these trillions of dollars opportunities.
Yeah, very important input here, but I think two small things I would like to add there. First of all, this initiative is not called One Belt, One Road anymore. The name of this initiative has actually been changed to the Belt and Road Initiative. The reason why we changed it is primarily because it is not just about one belt. It is not just about one road. It is multiple trade routes, multiple maritime trade routes. So in order not for people to have that kind of misunderstanding, the number has been taken out. Secondly, the number of countries that are invited to join this initiative has also been expanded. In the past we were talking about a set number of countries, 65 you mentioned, but basically now it's open to everybody. You know, if countries that are not geographically connected on these routes are also able to join through various means. Mr. Sombol, please.
Yeah, I just want to, I don't want to miss this opportunity, but to talk really about the importance of standardization. However, we all know that SME integration and being part of the global trading system is because also they have unfavorable, I would say, rules. And yes, bilateral agreements, we should really, as many called before, to add clauses actually to support this kind of integration. These rules are meant to restrict actually trade. And that's why you can see that now it is very important to really have it at the policy level, where you really want at the bilateral negotiation, at the bilateral agreements. This is what you really need to do, not only to focus on the standardization, because it will come later on.
Yeah.
I think we have the basics to address.
Yeah, Ms. Awani, please.
Okay, I wanted to talk about standards again. Not just talking about it, but also to highlight some of the what we're doing. Recognizing that, again, that standards will be an issue for exporters from Africa. We started an initiative for developing internationally certified certification centers across what we call our trade hubs in Africa. So ITFC is welcome to join us in that collaboration so that we have them set up. So we have a flagship lab in Nigeria, and this initiative started when we met a Nigerian export of ethnic foods. We have introduced the diaspora into our intra-African trade initiative because of the resources that we can garner for the development of Africa. He does $200 million of ethnic food to the US. But he tells us at least that at every point in time, about 30% of that shipment is rejected. So we started that initiative to set up labs with a pilot in Nigeria. And I also wanted to add to your first question, which is, for us in Africa, regional integration, we don't have a choice. It's absolutely a choice. Otherwise, we will continue to be susceptible to commodity price shocks as we've seen. Where countries have been in recession for a while, we must transform our economies and diversify and move away from earnings in foreign exchange. And that's the only way we can move out of poverty on a sustainable basis.
Yeah. Well, however, the challenges or the degree or the challenge, just I'm afraid we really have to go into the question and answer session from the audience, otherwise I'll lose my job for next year. Whatever point you want to make, maybe you will be able to do that during the Q&A session. Shall we open the floor, ladies and gentlemen? Any question for the participants here? Yeah, I see Madam Ambassador, as always. Thank you so much for your support. Yes, please, can we have the microphone here? Yes,
Thank
please.
you very much.
Thank you.
I'm getting quite a reputation. Thank you very much for the panelists. This has been most refreshing, hearing the experiences from across the world. My question relates specifically to Africa. I mean, we have had this for so long, that Africa needs to improve intracontinental trade. We've had it for so long. You're saying it's very important, it's vital, and we've had it. Now, have we reached a turn in the road? I mean, with all the efforts we're talking now about the continental free trade area, is there something that is happening to make us optimistic? In 2011, we had like 11% intra-African trade compared to 40% in Asia and 60% in Europe. So really, judging from the experiences which we see, we are not doing well. And we're still not doing well. What should make us optimistic now that all the efforts we're making are going to yield the results that we are expecting, especially because we have to beat the SDGs and we need that intra-regional trade to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Ms. Awani, you want to address that first, maybe?
Well, first of all, let me say that I think the enthusiasm is higher now than it has ever been before. A lot of it depends on national governments as well in implementing, Madam Ambassador, you're from Sierra Leone, and it's implementing those trade facilitation agreements, it's implementing the agreements when they are reached at the AU level, then you go home and implement them. It's to ensure that our borders are free of corruption, it's to ensure that roadblocks are dismantled, is the whole works. Obviously, there are some other structural issues that Africa has, things to do with small island countries, a lot of landlocked countries, the most landlocked countries in Africa. We do have that. But I think governments at the national level have a lot to do in implementing the agreements that have been reached. It was exciting to hear a few days ago that Nigeria has removed visa requirements for Africans. Small things that allow the movement of people and persons across and services across that. You know, it's agreements that are reached at the ECOWAS that national governments like your president and mine are able to implement and drill down to the customs, to the borders. It's everybody coming together, to make it happen. But I'm optimistic because I think we've come to that point where we know that there's no other way to go. We in Afrexim Bank are also taking the battle. It's almost like a battle, to governments advocating to facilitate, to remove. But if you're moving goods across from Nigeria to say Ivory Coast, the number of roadblocks is mind-boggling. In fact, in some areas the customs don't work. In some areas they work 24/7, in others they work 5 days, in other days they go for 5-hour lunch breaks, and then the taxes, the illegal taxes and the roadblocks are things that must be dismantled. You have to lend your voice, and I have to do my bit. That's the only way I can answer that.
Thank you. I think maybe China is also playing some kind of a role there, building the infrastructure, building the railway trains and helping train local train drivers and conductors. We're seeing this railway, right, linking some countries in Eastern Africa. Maybe there's a role there that can be played.
Well, he wants to answer it. I'll leave it to him to answer.
Please, go ahead. Just a comment I wanted to add.
Don't miss Her Excellency and the Ambassador, concerns. I think Africa is in the heart of all the MDBs. However, what we require to do is really to work together. We cannot do things now separately. ITFC has a great initiative. I spoke to you about it, which is actually for example, the Arab-Africa Trade Bridge, which has trade facilitation, trade promotion, trade finance, infrastructure, agricultural activities. They are all under one umbrella. We are working now with EIF, we are working with Africa Exim Bank on that. However, we have another initiatives that we are considered, hopefully, the cotton bank of Africa. So we finance a lot of commodities in Africa. However, the time comes where we need to work together as MDBs to create these special, funds for Africa. Again, because the potentials are great and they are untapped. And we can do a lot, really, between Africa and the other part of the world.
Thank you, Mr. Sombol. This lady here. Can we have the microphone for this lady in the middle? Yeah.
This is Yamna Al-Sharidi from Egypt, and I'm a businesswoman in the field of food, agriculture business. My question is to Hungary and to China. Hungary, I would like to ask, it's coming here, it was very challenging to seek data regarding different companies and how to communicate to reach the right target companies. And the era of data is becoming very challenging to be able to come and visit, and there is inter-regional work or regional as a hub for the rest of Europe. It was a big challenge. I don't know if there's a solution to that, if it exists or not. On the other hand, to China, I think the China model always challenges all of us. There is a lot of SME who lost business because of the China export aggressive policy. And my question is, instead of envying you, we need to ask you, where did it start? Was it the SMEs? Was it the education of the people? Was it how did China cross all the borders, breaking all the rules of regionality or non-regionality? You have been invading most of the trade and I think it affected many SMEs in many countries because of the China aggressive policy with export. It's not something that's good for you, but I need to ask, where did it start? Thank you.
Wow. Okay, Ms. Naji, please answer the first question.
If I understood well, you asked how we select and filter the companies if we have a region to direct and go to or enter the foreign market. To tell the truth, we do it together with the foreign representations because they are aware of the local needs, the market needs. There we have, if we are lucky, we have trade offices, and these trade offices, and together with our foreign attaches, either for economy or science or technology, or ambassadors who are aware of the local values and market needs. We match all these needs and try to focus on the Hungarian potentials, the Hungarian business potentials. And if we see the company or see the company's potential, then we identify whether they are ready or capable, whether they have the capacity to enter that market. And this is what we have to sometimes improve, because not just managerial skills, but also to get know with the culture of certain location is very important. To trade with foreign countries is easier because cultural values or cultural approach is very similar. But if we go further or farther to Asia or Arab countries, then we see that our business culture is not really integrating into that. So we have to finalize or identify these weaknesses our businesses have to face. And this is a long, long procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Naji. Professor Zhu? Yeah.
Yes, actually, China in the past exports a lot to the world. It's the largest exporter. But now we must note that the Chinese economy is transforming on demand side from an export-led or export-driven economy to consumption-driven economy. On supply side, China is transforming from a low-cost input-driven to innovation-driven economy. Though very slowly, but this transformation is quite effective in recent years. Therefore, that's why I just mentioned China also show very good intention to show its willingness to import more from the world. That's why Chinese President Xi Jinping this year offered to host the China International Import Expo in Shanghai next year. I think this really shows China's willingness to import more. But for the SMEs in the world, I think here maybe I can give you a very good showcase to help these SMEs to export to the market of China. That's the case of China-ASEAN cooperation. In 2015, an e-commerce China-ASEAN SME trade promotion platform has been launched. And now countries like SMEs in the countries like Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia can export more products to Chinese market, and even including micro firms rather than just SMEs. Micro firms maybe just include 3 to 2 people or 4 people. That's, I think, it's a very effective way or effective platform to help SMEs to sell more to the Chinese market.
Thank you, Professor Zhu. I hope that answer satisfied the question, the lady over there. Okay, we have the opportunity. Where's Jasmine? How much time do I have?
I think
5. Another
5 minutes later, I think.
5 minutes.
No?
No more time?
No.
Not even one more question? Okay. Desi here nods there. So sorry about that, but I see people still interested. We'll keep those questions for the private discussions later. Many thanks to all our panelists. Once again, let me say their names. Ms. Eşebet Naci, Managing Director of Hungarian National Trading House. Professor Zhu Caihua from the Institute of International Trade, Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation, Mr. Deep Kapuria, Chairman of CII, Central Europe Committee and Chairman of the High-Tech Group India, Ms. Im Maguire, Vice President of Technology Integration Group, the United States of America, Mr. Hani Salem Sombol, CEO of the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, and Ms. Kanayo Awani, Managing Director of African Export and Import Bank from Egypt. A warm round of applause for all our panelists. Thank you very much for your input. Of course, I should not forget to mention Marian Jensen, Chief Economist of International Trade Center. Always a great pleasure to hear your input every year. And many thanks to our audience members and to all of those who have been watching us on Facebook. Thank you very much. I hope the conversation will continue after this. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope it has not been too boring.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will have a very short coffee break. Please make sure to be back at 4 p.m. when we will have our next session, the Pitch Your Idea Young Entrepreneurs Competition. Thank you so much.
She knows I'm watching. She likes the way I stare. If they say why, tell them that it's human nature. Why does it do me that way? If they say why, tell them that it's human nature. Why does he do me that way? I like living this way. I like loving this way. Looking out across the morning, the city's heart begins to beat. Reaching out, I touch her shoulder. I'm dreaming of the street, telling that it's human nature. Does he do me that way? If they say why, telling that it's human nature. Does he do me that way? I like living this way. I like loving this way. I like loving this way. This thing called love